Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. Today in this episode, you're going to hear Dave Schwab, who was my student 10 years ago in a business school, majoring in management. It reminded me back then, I used to say what my teacher, Peter Vail, would say to me. Dave, it's not a management program or a business school unless you're graduating people who not only can run a business, but want to run a business, need to run a business. So here's the proof of the concept. You're going to hear Dave Schwab's story. My response is, I'm very proud of what he has become as this business, this small business that you'll hear about, and what he's going to be doing indefinitely because of what he loves to do best, which is the DAS Construction Company. Dave Schwab. Folks, you probably know, if you've been following this series, that some of our most joyful moments is when Peter and I could reach back to former students and have a conversation to see what practice life is like in real times and not just in our imaginations. And so unfortunately, Peter won't be in on this conversation directly, but I know that his spirit is here as we have a conversation with another one of my former students from Central Connecticut State University, who has always been in my mind as someone who is successful on his own ticket, his own initiative. Yes, he's had a lot of benefits from the larger world. He went to a good school and he got a really good leadership development program in a big company afterwards. But at the core of David Schwab, the man I'm talking about, is a very unique kind of commitment to being a business. Now, David, I don't know if you understand that, but I felt when you once told me that when you were working for your dad in the business that they're going to learn about as a kid, essentially out there digging holes, that it got into your blood in a way. And then when you did have the advantage of going to a very large corporation and you're on your way there in an operations leadership program, it stuck with you, that feeling that, you know, and you had a really key moment, maybe you'll talk about it first, where we once talked and you said, I could stay here in this large company and I see a long future, pretty much, you didn't say assured, but I would say assured because of the great size of the company and what it sold. Mm-hmm. Or I could go back and work with my dad in a very tiny company. What should I do? And you didn't ask me what you should do. You asked yourself what you do. And what you did was you went back to the small company. So could you talk about that moment in your life when there you were, right on the edge of a really big choice?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, thank you for having me on this podcast. You know, I said to you before, I'm humbled whenever you ask me to do things like this and come back to your classes and talk. And you know, I hope that I come across as worthy, but
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, the decision was definitely a difficult one for me in my life. As you know, at that time, I was just really starting a family, had gotten married, had my first child. So, my wife was pregnant with my first child. So to leave, like you said, kind of a sure thing, or you know, as close as I think I could get to a sure thing, being, you know, at a large insurance company, was a tough decision to make. But, you know, ultimately I did make the decision to go back to my father's, you know, very small company, where I think it was 30-something thousand employees, coming back to a company that had, I think it was 8 employees at the time. Mm-hmm. So I would have been one of 8 or 9. It was something that I weighed very, very carefully and very heavily. But ultimately for me, the decision came down to really having the control over my future and having the, ability to do multiple facets, or really all facets of the business on my own, and to kind of, I had plenty of years of experience in the business. I knew the subject matter. when I was working in insurance, I had a few years to, really learn that. And, just what it came down to is just having the ability to kind of touch all points of the business, really be able to have relationships with, people from all aspects of the business and customers and things like. When I was working in insurance, it was very, very siloed into one area at a time. And while I was in a leadership development program there and was able to rotate through the business, which was great and awesome experience. At the same time, you kind of go into one silo of the business where you stay, and you kind of have to, become an expert in that one area, and you didn't really get to see or interact with the other areas so much or understand how it really holistically worked with the company. So that was really ultimately my decision. Was I really liked I liked small business. I liked the holistic feel of it, the feeling that I can, really have a touch point on every aspect.
Well, that's a wonderful way of putting it. I said you were the business, and we'll have people learn a little bit about the business in a moment. But
Sure.
Then I had a different image. You essentially are wearing the business.
Absolutely.
like you took off what really probably was a very sure thing, the way life went in those major insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, baby comes, you get health benefits, you get all the rest, and you literally picked up where you left off and put that business back on with your dad. And it was gradually your dad moved back, and it became more and more what you were looking for, which is that contact from head to toe, that feeling that the books are yours to do, the phone calls are yours to answer, the crews are yours to hire and not keep. All of those decisions, countless decisions, which now you've been doing since how long ago when you made that change? 5 years maybe, Dave?
It's been actually about 7 years.
Yeah. So now tell folks a bit about the business that you went into, because he digs holes. That's the business.
Yep. So, our company, DAS Construction, we're an underground utility services company. So we specialize in small hole excavations. So like Doc said, we dig holes, and we do it by means of vacuum excavation. So basically we can, in a very safe manner, excavate soil by air and vacuum. So we suck it right out of the ground. It has a lot of benefits to, the customers and to really the community and the safety aspect. It's really the safest way to excavate. And then, like I said, we focus mainly on underground utilities. So underground pipelines and cables, and really specialized in natural gas is where we do most of our work. So ultimately, our goal every day is to go out there and dig holes and, do some maintenance on pipelines and cables underground.
Do you also do the testing of, like, if you're opening up a gas line, do you also do the listening to see if there's any hisses or anything, or do you open the hole up so that another kind of technology can come in from someone else?
So as far as any kind of leak repair goes, we do some leak repair, in the sense that we go down and we do, tests to see if there is gas leaking from the pipe. And then we can actually, from a small hole and all the work from the top of the hole, which also has a lot of safety benefits as to not being in the ground with a leaking pipeline, we can actually repair that leak with seals and things like that. So that's part of what we do. And then that would be on a, retroactive maintenance perspective. So we come after the fact, the pipe's already leaking, and we fix it. And then from the other side of it, preventative maintenance side, I actually do some testing to determine the condition of the pipe under the ground, where there may be issues with the pipe, and then we're able to install some different devices and materials that will mitigate any problems that the pipe might have for years to come. So making the pipes last underground.
So I'm picturing that when you've done one of those procedures and you've refilled the hole and it's covered over, and eventually, if it's out in the road, it's repaved.
Yep.
That is closure in the best sense of the word. You've assured the public, at least for that segment of pipe, that it's safe. You've assured your major utility client that they're still okay in that regard for that particular spot. And you drive by there with now your two children and you say, hey, one day, Dad, that's one of our jobs right there. And they look and they say, we don't see anything.
Exactly.
So your closure is it becomes invisible for the rest of the time if it works right. If it doesn't, then that's not, it's a whole other story. But I think I think going back to your feeling about being in a massive company, other than project focus where you can actually finish a project, it must feel hard to get that sense of closure and accomplishment and, hey, I did that. You like bring your kids into the insurance company and show them a desk and say, see that computer screen, see those numbers? I wrote those. And that's good. I'm not putting it down. But some people aren't built that way. I don't think you are built that way. I think probably I'm guessing as you were growing up with your dad running that business and seeing how it was done and working with the crews, that you could see how good it felt for them to, well, as we say, a job well done. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great point that you bring up. And that working in insurance, that was always kind of one of my problems, or one of the things that didn't really make me feel great about doing it, was that in this company or in this industry, even in the natural gas industry and the underground utilities industry, I came right from the ground up. So since I was 15 years old, I started as a laborer, a shovel guy out in the street. So I didn't even have enough experience to run the vacuum or the machinery at that point. It was just, I shoveled dirt. And to come from the very beginning of something like that, and then to kind of work your way through every single step of the way. And while it's a small company and we don't have that many layers, and at, the insurance company, there were far more layers, and I don't think it would be possible for anybody to hold every single job. Just the feeling of not having ever, issued a policy or, had my hands on underwriting a policy or something like that. It just made it difficult for me to connect all the pieces together. And while at the leadership development program, they did a great job, like rotating us through and giving us that learning. To me, it was just not having that connection all the way back to the beginning, where it all starts, or where the work actually gets done. And, when you work in a small company, even if you weren't able to hold every job, I think it's so much easier to see every single layer. And like you said, I think I'm just built in a way that's kind of what I need. I need to have experience and seen every single layer of the business, and be able to have that deep understanding of each part. And then I can really draw on those experiences and manage the best I can, and, kind of continue learning.
Continuing learning, absolutely crucial. As you know, from the times I used to even probably tell you about Peterville back in the day, how much he and I believe in the natural force of learning when it's applied by an individual or even collectively by a group to address and solve real problems in real time. And that's something I've always admired about you, Dave. You were a great problem solver in my classes. You get a team together. I'd throw out one of my little puzzles, as you recall, or some of my gimmicks, and your team would go click, 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 done. And I'd look around and say, hey, wait, there's 40 minutes left in the class. So you have a gift for that. But the other thing that I'm thinking about, being a small business person, your reputation, your name is on the company in a way, along with your dad's, but you are the one that they know. Your personal reputation, your practice reputation is strategic to any future you want to have in that business. Or am I overstating that?
No, absolutely. And my father and I have the exact same name too. So, so reputation, absolutely goes a long way there for both of us. And we both have to, because sometimes people don't even know who they're talking to, whether it's me or my father. And a lot of times they don't care, as long as they're getting the work done.
Getting the work done.
But yeah, absolutely. Reputation is everything. And, I think as a small player in this industry and a small company in this industry as well, I think that reputation has gotten us a very long way and kept us in business to this point. I honestly don't think without my father's reputation in this, we would even be in existence today. Just in my experiences over the past 7 years, a lot in this industry, like any industry, goes on price, and you price a job and they want a price. But so many times I know we have not been necessarily the lowest price, but our reputation has, preceded us, and people and managers and positions are able to say, listen, with DAS Construction, you get Dave and Dave. You get those two who are going to be there when you call, and we're there when they call. And, we can reprioritize, we can flex, we can do whatever we can with whatever time constraints, we're given to get things done for people, and to make sure the job's getting done, the, safety is maintained, and those kinds of things. And I really do think that goes a long way. And a lot of times in bigger companies, I don't, some maybe yes and some maybe no. I don't know that you get that, though, that personal attention. And that's really what we kind of try to strive for and thrive on, and, kind of keeps us going.
I think that's the right word, thrive. I would think that in the pricing game, when a big corporation is trying to get the price they want.
Yep.
Yeah, that may be true if they're buying lumber or something, but you are providing them the authentication that the cable or the pipe that is their responsibility, underground cable, is either repaired or it's tested and it's safe.
Yep.
I don't know if I want to give that to someone who's going to be a great low price, but
yeah,
the people working on that project, it's this week's bill. Oh, is Bill there? Oh no, he's gone, but there's a new bill. I'm stretching the point that so much of what's happened with these mid-size and larger companies is that they don't have that kind of Dave and Dave kind of continuity.
Yep.
That I would want if I were sitting there on a purchasing side saying, who should I buy from? So they can have to make the case sometime to their financial guys. Hey, no, we're going with them.
Yep.
And here's why. They've got a great reputation and we can trust them.
Yep.
Now, that must feel good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point, that in other industries, or, if they're just purchasing materials, that's easy to, quality check and vet and know, okay, well, the lumber's good, it's fine. But when you're talking about something that's so safety sensitive and so compliant, and compliance sensitive, I think, it definitely gives us a slight advantage. And like you said, it feels good to sometimes know that, hey, we didn't quite hit the mark, and we weren't able to quite hit the mark with price. The economies of scale just aren't there. We have spread our expenses over such a small amount of business compared to these other companies who can, operate on such a tight margin. But hey, they still picked us. They still chose us. They still came back and, even asked us to renegotiate, when that's usually, from my experience, not part of the process. But they'll say, hey, Dave, can you guys do any better? Can you be a little more competitive? You kind of missed the mark. But to just get those conversations, it feels good. It's a nice thing to have that relationship with the customers. And a lot of times these customers are from really big companies, and to me it's cool and nice that, like, hey, this is a huge company, and at a company wide level, I don't think they really care, but in certain areas of this company, the people we interact with, they do care, and they do care that we're still there with them and working with them. So
yeah, because they're totally dependent on external purchase, like purchasing your service, and unless they wanted to create their own company that does what you do, a big company might, but that's not the trend in any large corporation these days. It's you try to develop a partnership and you outsource as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another aspect of this, though. There's always a yin and yang. On the inside, you know what makes you thrive, and from the standpoint of reputation, the quality of your work. But you also mentioned having to manage your costs. And there's some real juggling there, isn't there? Because I assume that the equipment you're using gets kind of old, and sometimes your crews can't live here in this state on what most people pay, by the hour, unless you give them some increases. So how do you manage cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a challenge. So like you mentioned, we don't have the newest, latest, greatest equipment. A lot of times you see, it's a little discouraging sometimes. You see the other companies.
Yeah, all shiny and bright, right? You're
Brand new,
competitive.
yeah, brand new stuff. And it's just like, wow, well, that would be nice. And then you kind of think it through, or you run the numbers, and you're like, well, when these vacuum excavators are costing $180,000 to $200,000, you're like,
Wow.
well, not going to be buying or financing one of those brand new anytime soon. And you got to make the equipment work. And it's funny you bring that up, because right after we get off here, one of my projects is actually we had one of our systems is beyond repair. It died. It's beyond repair. So now one of my father's and I projects for the next week or two is going to be actually we have a very good system, a vacuum system, on an older truck, which that truck is, depreciated and, time to retire. So we're going to be swapping that system from one truck to the other. And it's a completely new thing to us. It's going to be figuring out how to get it done, how to do it. We're going to have to rent equipment and get it done. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the most cost-effective way to keep one full unit operating really well, rather than try to sell both of those units with, each having their own different problems, maybe get something for them, and then trying to refinance a newer unit or something like that. I think it's going to be the most cost-effective way. So that being just one example of how I think in a small business, you juggle those things, and you figure things out, and you manage costs in that way by kind of figuring through it and figuring out what you can afford, and then moving on.
Yeah, but I also want to put in some sweat equity on that, you and your dad, right? If you're going to be switching those up, granted you have some crew that might help, but it's not like you're going to unplug a module,
Yeah.
and snap it in something else. It's a relatively physical job, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, and absolutely. And it'll be a couple Saturdays and Sundays, but at the end of the day, I actually enjoy things like that. I find those kinds of things fun, and my wife doesn't like it so much sometimes, but I find it fun because it's new, it's exciting, and it's a change from the daily. Like you said, I worry about managing the books, and managing the payroll, and managing the employees, and that could get kind of monotonous sometimes. But when you have something like this that kind of throws a wrench in the spokes and makes you think outside the box, and become somewhat of an engineer for the weekend, it could be fun. And you
but there are real stakes involved. It's fun, but it's not a hobby. And
yeah.
and I think I heard you say you haven't done it before. Maybe it hasn't been done before. So you don't have 100% guarantee that when you click it on to the other truck and turn the switch, right?
That's part of our concern. Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to be listening. If it doesn't start sucking,
Yeah.
like, uh-oh, this sucks. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not sucking. It's
or
quiet.
doesn't. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I now your dad is very involved, even though he's not directly managing the business as you are now. But
Yep.
but that's a great combination and a great partnership. Tell us a little bit about how because you've got to rely. You can't be on every job if you got more than one job going, and therefore
Yep.
you've got a crew. How about not about individuals, but as a crew? As single word crew.
Yep.
How have you developed them to the extent that you're confident that when you give them a project that it's going to be done, and then you can just come in and do the eyeball check?
Yeah. So, and part of the hard thing with that is doing the eyeball check could be tough, because as you mentioned before, the majority of our work gets buried. So
they fill in a hole, and you look at it and say, oh yeah, it looks,
yeah.
Maybe you should peek
So
in the hole first. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of trust is involved with the employees, and that's always a difficult thing. And that's something that gets developed over time. And I can't remember a time, at least in my time here, that we've ever hired a foreman right into a foreman position. So they've always been hired into a lower position and then worked their way up into that position. And I think part of that is developing the trust that not only they learned and know what they're doing and the proper way to do things and the safe way to do things, but also just developing that trust with us that we can trust that they will do things correctly and properly and safely. Like we mentioned before, very, very, very safety sensitive work that we do needs to be done correct 100% of the time. There's really no exceptions in the industry that we're in. There's really no second chances with any kind of major safety violations or compliance violations. So as far as developing them, like I said, it's hiring them from the ground up, kind of managing and training them along the way, and then there is a lot of training that goes into it from a couple of perspectives. So there's the technical training of how to do the work, how to get it done correctly and safely. But then there's the whole other side of it, which is the safety piece of it. And one of the new things that we're actually doing with, everything that's going on with COVID in these times, and, just a small positive that we're taking out of it is with one of the larger utility companies we work with is they do a daily, actually now it's a few times a week, safety briefing. And it's a morning safety briefing. We get it every morning. And it's allowed us to kind of take their resources and pool them in with us and have these safety briefings with our guys. And it takes anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, I would say. But the impact to me has been tremendous. My guys have responded like way better than I would have thought to it. I thought they might have taken it as, oh, here's another thing, here's another,
another lay on.
Yeah. But they've actually loved it, and they've been just listening intently to it. They've been asking questions. They've been, they actually asked me if they could have the resources. So we developed a way that they can have the resources on their company phones out in the field, so they can have these safety briefings, with them every day and be able to review them if they want, or, use them in whatever way they want. And, we were able to do that for them. So, just things like that, and just having, different ways and those different aspects on how to train and teach people and keep learning and improving. That's all we can do.
So you are your own finance guy, or your own bookkeeper in a way. You are your own essentially engineer. You're also your own mechanic, as you and your dad try to figure out how to shift that unit. You're an HR guy. You're the chief safety officer of the company. Have I left out any role? No, you have to sell. Tell us a little bit about that, because once the holes are covered and that contract is complete, there's a pipeline of another sort for you to fill too, isn't there? And how do you do that in a very still, I think, a competitive environment, because you do specialized work, but there's got to be some others who can do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's, with any industry, I think there's competition. And as, as far as sales go, it's definitely, that's one of my more challenging roles. I never thought of myself as a salesman. Never really thought I was very good at it, but it's one of those things. You get into a small company or position like this, and that's your livelihood. You have to do it. You have to get out there and you have to promote your business, or you're not going to have any business to come to, tomorrow, next year, or what have you. So, I think, a lot of it, like we talked about before, reputation kind of preceding us. And we do end up getting a lot of word of mouth business, but then it's a matter of just kind of answering questions for those clients, understanding what their specific needs might be, what they need out of a job, and then, ultimately pricing that job and putting a proposal for it, and then negotiating that proposal to, a point where everybody's happy. We can earn a good profit, and they can get a job well done. And, hopefully that's how it works out at the end of it all.
Those are beautiful moments, aren't they? When it comes together, what you propose is going to be reasonably profitable for you, and they're going to get the job done. And essentially that sells your next job, if they happen to have a next job, which in the case of these big utility companies, they always will. I remember once you told my class when you were a guest, I can't remember what city you were in, maybe it was Middletown, Connecticut, but Connecticut is 300 some years old, and gas lines were put in, I don't know, over 100 years ago. And I think you said there was like a huge number of miles of the older gas piping that goes into every home and building around that town, and probably true of any of the cities here in this state. that's a huge responsibility for those gas companies, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think,
Are they systematically trying to replace some of those at the same time that they're keeping the ones they have safe? How does that work? Because I'm sure that's on everyone's mind every time they hear one of these news stories about places going boom.
absolutely. Yeah. So, I think the oldest pipeline that I can remember working on was 1898. So late 1800s. So
Yeah,
well over 100-year old.
when gas became the way they were lighting their homes.
Exactly. Yeah. So, very, very, very old pipe. And like you mentioned, these utility companies, they have a tremendous job in front of them to monitor all of these pipelines, to maintain all of these pipelines, but also absolutely have a huge initiative going on to replace many, many miles of these pipelines. So they've been replacing most of the smaller piping, 4 or 6 inch piping. Most of the old stuff has been replaced at this point. And then now they're moving towards some of the larger pipelines, which ultimately takes business or part of our business away, because as those pipelines get replaced with new plastic pipelines, plastic is very low to no maintenance. So kind of changes the whole dynamic for us. But ultimately, what needs to be done, I mean, you can't keep pipe in the ground forever.
I think, though, if you look strategically, there's a lot more of the older piping than the new piping ahead for you. And you do have 2 wonderful children who you'd love to put through college at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
How old's your oldest daughter now?
She's 5.
She's 5. So let's see. And then do the math. You've got about 12 years, and then you got to figure out how to pay to send her to my school, Central Connecticut, because it might be even more expensive than when you went there. But anyway, I think, though, that again, every small businessman and woman, person in this country right now is looking at relative survival versus disaster. There's not much on the growth side. At least you have a product that you serve with that is indispensable.
Yep.
But it still doesn't mean you just can lean back and say, I'm all set. You've still got to keep that tension. And we're getting toward the end of this call, and I'm just wondering, because I find that there's a kind of a competitor in you of the best kind. You're not necessarily competing against other companies, which you are. You have that tension of an athlete. That give me another game, give me another. I want to be ready for it. I want to punch my way through in a very positive sense. Am I picking up on you in a way you'd like to be reflected? Because I think that's you. You're an athlete.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's that sounds great to me. I mean, I do think I definitely have that drive in me to do the next thing. It could possibly come from my background in when I used to race motocross and competitively and Yep. So it's a competitive thing. It's a competitive environment, and I enjoy that. I enjoy, like you said, it's not necessarily competing against others, but a lot of times it's competing against yourself or what you've done before. And I don't think even if I stayed in the insurance world, in the insurance industry, I don't see myself staying in the same role for too long ever. I need something new. I need something different. And you mentioned it before, continuous learning. I just enjoy learning new things and kind of bettering myself and change, really. So I think a lot of it comes down to competition, but also just enjoying and thriving on the change or the difference.
I forgot you were a motocross guy, which adds a little element of risk in there as well. Speed, risk, but skill, a lot of skill, and a lot of reliance on the integrity of the equipment that you were using back then. I'm guessing that your wife, Kitty, is not real eager for you to resume the motocross part of your life, is she?
Yeah, no, she's just about over that part. I've had plenty of injuries that she was actually a nursing assistant, so she's nursed me back from plenty of injuries that I've had while with her. And now I've just moved on to mountain biking, where a couple years ago I shattered my collarbone, and then she had to do it all again. And she's like, well, it's one thing to the next with you, but
Probably, if you do get on a bike going forward, she'll put training wheels on it for you,
yeah,
like
yeah.
you do for your daughter. And
Yep.
tell us a little bit about your boy, your new baby. How's that going along?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. So I have my 5-year-old daughter, and then my son now is 1.5, and
Wow.
just getting to the point where he's on 2 feet, and the second he hit 2 feet, he was running, and he's still run laps around the house. And lately we haven't been going to playgrounds much or anything like that, but so we just go outside a lot, and he's amazing. He just loves to explore, and Lila will be doing her thing, kicking a soccer ball around, and he's getting right in there in the mix with her, and he gets knocked down and falls over. It's funny the differences between boys and girls, and with Lila, I always kind of raised her up, right next to me doing whatever, and we ride bikes and kick soccer balls, and she falls down, but he's like on a whole nother level of just tumbles and just gets up like nothing happened, and it's wild. So,
Yeah.
but it's fun.
Well, David, you've got the whole package there in your life. I'm very happy for you. You've got a business that keeps you knowing and growing.
Yeah.
You've got a great spouse and 2 great kids, and I think you got a new house, didn't you, fairly recently?
We did. Yeah. A few years ago, we bought a new home. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's all as it should be. If someone asked me back when you were still my student, Dave, why do you put so much effort into designing these classes the way you do, with all these bells and whistles, and you put hours and hours into reading what the kids write, you bring in guests, all that. Why do you do it? And my answer is, so every one of these students can earn a style of life in this state that gives them everything that's
Yep.
possible. Family connections, a decent home, all the things you'd want for anyone. You'd certainly want it for my kids.
Yep.
And is that too much to work for? No, it's the one big thing to work for. And then you work back from there. Okay, what is Dave Schwab going to need to know 10 years from now
Yep.
to be able to have the life that he wants to earn? And the key word is earn. I never told you you're going to just get it. You had to earn it. But at
Absolutely.
least we gave you, and hopefully in our business education, some of the basics that you needed to earn it with. And you certainly are. I certainly commend you. I will ask you one self-serving question before we finish. Since I'm bragging about me being a teacher in your life, what do you remember the most from my classes? Because you took, I think, everything I taught.
Yeah, I took everyone I could. After that first one, I was hooked. And just like on this podcast, I've been listening to. I think I'm in episode 5 or 6 at this point. I'm hooked. I'm in. So,
Good.
Yeah, it was just super impressed by your and Peter's ideas and conjectures. It was just I'm hooked. But yeah, as far as the classes go, yeah, I was actually reflecting and thinking on it last night, and just thinking about the human beings and the intrepid time travelers. And I think the biggest thing, though, that I take from the classes was the really practicality of it all. And like you mentioned, so many times in education and in a lot of the classes I took, whether it be management or otherwise, it was so focused on the theory, and it was sometimes hard to bridge the gap of where this is going to help me or where I'm going to use that. And then I think what happens there is it was so easily, for me anyway, it was so easily forgotten when I couldn't kind of bridge that gap. But with your classes, having the speakers in, having the games to play, which, were games, but they were challenges. They were, really business challenges. And we drew from our own business experiences, however limited they might have been at that point, to, like you said, problem solve and come up with those. I think that's really what I took away from those classes. It's just strengthening the ability to problem solve and just being able to understand, okay, how can I take this theory about, whether it be human resources or, human resources related or even innovation related, how can I take that and use that in the future 10 years from now? And, that's another one that I draw on is the innovation. I mean,
Remember
especially being in a small company.
Woe to go.
And what would it go exactly? And just with the whole truck thing, I mean, that was one of those points where, okay, we need to be innovative here. We can't go out and buy a new one. We need to make something work here. So, those are all things I think that I draw on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So.
I couldn't be happier to have you remember the total dynamic of what we were working for. And you asked me before the call, since you'd been listening to Peter, if Peter was like that as a teacher. And my answer was absolutely. It's what made my eyes light up about organizational behavior as a subject of interest. It opened my eyes in terms of the rapport that you can develop, and particularly in a classroom, and how important that was to mutual learning, something that Peter really loved. And finally, Peter liked to cook up some exercises too. You'll hear him in one of the conversations talk about where he took a table when he had some graduate students, and he put, I think it was a tennis ball on the table, and he put a square in the middle. It's like the ones kids, but they all had to cooperate to move to get the ball to come to the middle. Sort of like that little children's game, but he did it, and he had such delight in how that initial idea started to develop. Then he said, I went down and actually built a surface that I brought to class. I mean, this is a guy who was teaching at the top level and programs great. And he had just liked building that table to see how he could make that game do more things to emphasize what he called high performing teams. Yeah, you have Peter Vail to thank for this conversation today. So
I kind of had the feeling listening to the first few episodes of the podcast. I was like, he's got to teach just like Doc, because I had that feeling, and how he likes to take the theory to practice. It's exactly what needs to be done.
Well, thank you. I can tell you, I'm really delighted. So.
Well, no, thank you, Doc. I appreciate it, and I feel blessed, and to have these opportunities with you, and to have taken the classes with you. It's certainly contributed to where I am today. So thank you.